fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. It's Thanksgiving week, a lot to be thankful for, except for the Seattle Seahawks. No, I'm just kidding. I'm very thankful for the long history that we have with the team. We're struggling this year, but, you know, there's still some good stuff. Keith, hey, hi.
Yeah, it's good to be, we can be thankful for the Seahawks, but not be thankful for their current performance and record. How's that? Is that a nice diplomatic way of putting it?
There you go.
They've been pretty bad this year.
And there's a lot to be thankful for outside of football. Friends, absolutely. Family, dogs and cats, and all that stuff.
An awesome partner for a radio show,
there you
podcast.
Go. Thank you. You too. So here we go. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive into what is currently the Seattle Seahawks team this week. So coming out of week 11, heading into week 12, Monday Night Football against the Washington Football Club. We're going to talk about that. At the top here, just want to share some news with Trey Brown. Suffered that patella tendon injury to his left knee in the second quarter of the Cardinals game, and he's done for the season. Ended up having surgery. The last time we talked, we weren't quite sure exactly what was going to happen there, but it did happen. Statement from the Seahawks physician says that Trey Brown successfully went into surgery to repair his patellar tendon and medial and lateral reticular tears this morning. He will remain on crutches for 6 weeks, and his rehabilitation period will be 6 to 7 months. I expect him to make a full recovery. So with that timeline, it looks like training camp is a possibility.
It is.
Or the beginning of the season.
Yeah, looking at some of the news reports that are out there, they were saying June would be a chance for him to get back. So he may be a limited participant through all of the summer OTAs and all of that and mini camps. And so he should be, he'll probably be a limited participant in practice throughout training camp, just as they ease him back. But he should be back for next year, which is great news.
And we know that we're probably going to have to revamp the defensive back room for this team this offseason. I think we just do. And I'm not exactly sure. I'm not completely sold on DJ Reed over on the right side. He's good, but he's susceptible to injury, and it just doesn't seem to be like premier. And I'm not sure if we need Pro Bowl caliber defensive backs in this scheme, or if we can get by with something less. But it looks like Trey Brown's a guy that we could kind of pencil in a little bit there as a starting left corner on this team going forward, and that's a good thing. I think the team at least needs one guy back there that we can kind of build around.
I think you have to look at Trey Brown and go, okay, yes, we believe he's that guy, but he may not be that guy next year. The patellar tendon injury is it's severe. It usually takes, just getting him back on the field for next year doesn't mean he's going to be back to the same level of play, with his knee the way it is and everything. So I think that looking forward, they do need to go and drastically upgrade cornerback. And that's even if Reed and Brown are both healthy.
And it depends on how you feel about Sidney Jones and so forth. Of course, he's only under contract for this season. In fact, it's just bleak after the starters. It really is.
Yeah. They came into this year with Ahkello Witherspoon as a presumed starter and Trey Flowers as the third guy. And both those guys are gone because they just kind of refused to play the scheme as it was, drawn up. They just felt that they knew better and weren't going to do what was being asked of them. So they've been jettisoned off the roster. And you've seen that without them, the defense has been better than, Witherspoon never made it even to a game, but Flowers did. And once he was sent packing, the defense got better because they had people doing their job as it's supposed to be done. And so that's been a thing. But it shows you that, they had guys that they liked, in the off season, but it definitely didn't work out. And now you've got those three, one of which is hurt now and out for the year. The other one is banged up, and we'll see if he can play this week. Sidney Jones is perpetually injured and only under contract for this year. It's the whole position group needs retooled, revamped. They need to bring in they need to bring in a starter. They need to bring in one guy that they can count on. And
the good news is, there's a couple good things. We have $56 million in salary cap in 2022 projected right now.
Yep.
We don't have a left tackle under contract.
That's not good news.
We don't have a right tackle under contract, and we don't have a center under contract.
That's also not good news.
So that's going to eat up a significant portion. And one of the things I did this morning is I tweeted out kind of what I thought my simple diagnosis of what's going on, because there's going to be two camps in this offseason, I believe. A camp that's kind of a minimalist, let's do what we need to do to kind of keep the band together, if you will, and kind of rebuild and retweak where we need to really focus and keep the coaching staff. And I think it really is up to Pete Carroll if he stays or goes. And it seems to me that he would lean on staying because he is under contract. And, I really do believe that he's firmly entrenched in this. He's got his ideas about what to do, what to fix. If they can retain Russell Wilson, you kind of build around that a little bit. So my idea was that the offensive line is really the culprit here in a general sense. Mm-hmm. That if Russell Wilson had not been hurt and you had incrementally better play on the offensive line this season, we really could have probably came away with 4 additional wins, and it had been at 7 wins right now. And we would be having a completely different conversation. We'd be talking about how we could get to 12 wins and finish out the season strong, maybe even 13 if we only had one additional loss. And then we're talking about where can we go in the playoffs. So to me, if that's true, and I'm not sure if it is, but if it is true that we were only maybe 3 offensive linemen away, plus, a running back 1A away from being that team, do we really need to blow the whole thing up? Have we gotten to that point where the whole thing needs to be completely redone? Now, obviously, we're talking about an additional position group, defensive backs, that needs revamping as well. Maybe an additional 3 tech that could really have some big game potential to kind of disrupt stuff and then tweak everything else like we normally do. What are your thoughts around that as far as the state of the offensive line? Is that somewhat of a realistic idea of what's going on and what might happen in the offseason, or are we really on track to kind of just blow this up?
No, the offensive line needs blown up. They've got 2 players that are worth carrying forward into next year.
In addition to some young guys we just don't know enough about yet.
True. Okay. Of the 5 starters, really of the 7 guys who've played this season, because out of the 5 starters include the backup center Fuller, who played a bunch, and Jamarco Jones, who kind of is the backup at 4 positions. Of that group, you've got 2 starters for next year. And if you want to keep Jamarco Jones around because he's that kind of Swiss Army knife backup, that's fine. But he's not a starter. And so you've got 3 of 7 guys that you need. And yes, you've got some young guys that might step up into roles, but we don't know anything about them yet. You need players and you need starters on the offensive line. So as far as blowing things up, you can blow that position group up. But then you look at the rest of the offensive personnel, right? You've got a franchise quarterback. He's not playing real well right now because of the injury and some other things, but we've got 10 years of knowing that he's a franchise quarterback, right? This isn't we don't know, or we think maybe. No, he is. You've got two of the best receivers in the game. You've got a tight end, which is really playing well in Carl Everett. You've got another tight end who is a nice piece because he can block well. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Just a good player in Will Disley. You've got you've got some pieces. I like Alex Collins, DJ Dallas, and Travis Homer in the backfield, but they do need the number one guy.
We don't even know what we have in Eskridge, at this point as well. Yeah.
They need to go find a guy like Chris Carson who can stay healthy, right? They need a running back, but the offensive line and a running back. Okay, and the thing
when you've got $56 million to spend and you've got 7 draft picks, and all of those draft picks look now like they will be somewhat early in every round,
except for round 1.
Correct.
But you've also got, when you think about that, if you rebuild the offensive line and make the offensive line good instead of mediocre, do we need a new running back? Because behind a really good offensive line. You look at the offensive line
I think so. You look at
Dallas is built.
Yeah, but you look at
right?
Yeah, but they have a great running back. You look at Henry. You look at what Taylor is doing now.
Yes, but they've also
those premier guys under a really good offensive line are really giving them the offenses that they're in opportunities to not be so one dimensional, and those are really hard to slow down.
But if you have a good offensive line will make a good running back look great and an average running back look good.
Yeah. I think that we're going to have to spend some sort of capital on a running back. I think that's a given. Chris Carson had the knee or the neck thing, and he's under contract next year, but we just don't know. Penny's gone.
Yeah.
Collins is not under contract. We're going to have to elevate that position to either spend draft capital or go out and get a reasonable free agent, not top end, but something that's going to be able to come in. We can depend on at least being a number 1 caliber running back heading into the draft. I think solving that position before the draft would be a nice way to approach that. And we have the draft capital and free agent money to be able to do that. I think that's important.
I just think that if you fix the offensive line, and you really solidify it and you build like a wall up there in front of Wilson, it fixes so many different things, and it will make Alex Collins look like a legit running back.
I think so.
And so
I think so.
And
it'll make Russell Wilson look like a legit quarterback. That has having an MVP type season, because I think what we're seeing this year in the Shane Waldron situation, where they talked about blending that kind of quick up-tempo stuff that Waldron and the history of that type of offense comes from with what, quote unquote, we were already successful at, which is basically the moon ball. We need more time for Russell Wilson to have to allow those plays to develop if it's going to be good. And if we can't even have that because it's not part of the playbook, because we just don't have the time for those plays to develop because the offensive line sucks, it's not good. So I do believe that solves a lot of different problems in a lot of different areas. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach that.
So when it comes down to it, I mean, this isn't a small thing that we're talking about. You're looking for 3 new starters and completely creating a new offensive line. You're looking at finding a new franchise left tackle.
Yes.
Like that alone is like a massive undertaking.
I agree. And I don't know why we waited so long.
Yeah. Especially when you don't have a top 10 draft pick, like finding a franchise left tackle.
That would be the main argument against Jamal Adams is, would you rather have your premier left tackle of the future on this roster, or would you rather have Jamal Adams? Because that's what happened when we got Jamal Adams. We traded away 2 first-round picks, and either one of those picks could have been the left tackle of the future. Now we have Stone Forsythe, which is awesome, but there's a reason why Stone lasted as long as he did, and why he hasn't been able to kind of come up and take snaps this year and so forth. We just don't know what we have. He could be the guy. We just don't know.
Well, I mean, the reason is because he loses leverage. He's just so dang tall. And he's not a good run blocker because he has a hard time getting his pads under.
And so that's never going to go away unless he just builds enough core strength where he can overcome that.
Yeah. I mean, he's never not going to be a 6'8". I mean, that's the thing. But he is a good pass blocker. And so, could he be part of the solution? Perhaps, but we're not going to know unless they actually get him on the field and let him get some playing time. So let's refocus a little bit and let's talk about this Tyler Lockett thing you mentioned to me right before the show. Yeah. So after the game, Tyler Lockett really kind of opened up about what was going on. Really, the struggles on third down was what the question is, but he was talking more generally. And what he's saying is, they watch the film on these teams, and like Arizona their defense has been primarily a man coverage defense for 8 games. That's what they play. So the Seahawks build a game plan around that tendency of Arizona, and then Arizona comes out and plays almost exclusively zone through the entire game. And so they just they haven't practiced how to attack this defense when they're playing zone.
Or adjusted in game.
True, but I mean, it's the whole game plan, everything that's drawn up, everything that's put together is about the way Arizona has played all their other games, and then they're coming out and playing something completely different against Seattle.
Okay, so what happened with Carroll or Wilson addressing the same issue?
Well, so Pete Carroll basically was like, somebody asked him directly, Tyler Lockett said this, what do you have to say? And his first response was, well, you're assuming that he's right. And then he paused because he didn't want to throw his player under the bus. And then he starts talking about, some other things and some execution problems and, that kind of thing. But it also comes down to that they're just not making the adjustments in game fast enough. And what Pete Carroll was talking about is that, teams are playing Russell Wilson a certain way. Like every team plays a lot of zone against the Seahawks because they're afraid of Wilson's ability to extend plays. They want guys with their eyes forward rather than turning around and everyone running away from him.
And it affords you to get an extra guy back at the back end of the thing to make sure that nothing gets over the top.
Yeah, all the moonshots that he throws. So teams are playing Russell Wilson a particular way, and it doesn't really matter what Arizona had done the previous 8 games if this is what they're going to do. This is their game plan. Like the Seahawks need to be able to attack what they're doing, not what they've done in the past. And so there's a disconnect between the game planning and the in-game stuff.
And we have a new offensive coordinator that's a young guy that hasn't had a ton of experience calling plays, quote unquote, but he has had a lot of experience in the NFL and under some really good coaching. Yep. So where's the disconnect? Like Russell Wilson, I think mostly comes out and just says, no, it's not that. We just need to execute. We need to execute the plays. Yeah. And we're struggling with that. And I think that points more towards the offensive line struggles as almost anything else, because he's just not having enough time to execute the way that he likes to execute.
Because the play as it's drawn up does not have him having to adjust to pressure during his drop, right? As he's taking his 5-step drop.
Yes. And it is the 5 and 7-step drops we're talking about here.
Not always. There's the 3-step drops.
That's true. Where he's immediately got somebody on him. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of pressure right up the middle because center's been a major problem. And these are things that for him, he's like, give me a reason. He's not saying it because he's not going to throw his offensive line completely under the bus, but he's like, give me a reasonable amount of protection and I'll be able to get the ball out where it's supposed to go. But I can't because I'm taking 2 steps back, having to move to the side, having to protect the football. And that's, stopping me from getting the ball out where it needs to go. Okay, that's partly true. It's also partly true that Wilson's just not playing well. Like there's specifically one of the times when they got down into the red zone, and he threw the ball into double coverage to DK Metcalf when he had Freddie Swain open in the back of the end zone if he throws the ball on time. And even if he doesn't, he's got Carl Everett completely uncovered with no one within 10 yards of him at the goal line just after. But instead...
Gerald Everett, just so you know.
What did I say?
Carl. And that was the second time in this show, too. I let the first one go, but I couldn't let the second one go.
No, don't ever let that go. That's just dumb. Gerald Everett was wide open at the goal line, completely uncovered. He had to come across the field, and so by the time he uncovers and is just there, Wilson's already kind of locked in and is throwing into double coverage. Give Wilson time. Give him a chance to be comfortable where he can see that, okay, Metcalf's not the option there. Even if he misses Swain, coming open early, because that's not where his read was. His first read was Lockett on the far side of the field. He doesn't have to throw into double coverage because there's someone in his face. He can come off Metcalf, recognize that Everett's coming across uncovered and unloaded the ball there, but he doesn't have that time. And so you have a bunch of different factors that are coming in here. And I don't think Lockett's wrong. And I don't think Pete Carroll's wrong. I think what Pete Carroll was saying in his part is, sure, that's a thing, but we can adjust in game. It doesn't matter that much.
Sure.
Like, let's make sure that we know what we're going to do in different situations and be more prepared. And
it does point to a stubbornness, though, that Pete has always had, and I've admired a little bit when it works. It's great. When it doesn't, when you don't have the personnel, and I think that's part of the issue here is we're talking about is we don't have the offensive line to allow the scheme to work properly. So when Pete goes into a game saying it doesn't matter who the opponent is or what they want to do to us, we want to execute our stuff and impose it onto the defense. That's just not possible, and that's why they went out and got Waldron and they made the comments in the offseason about not being one-dimensional, that Shane Waldron and this offense is specifically designed to allow the offense to adapt, to be able to do what the defenses are giving them and taking advantage of those things. And we haven't even been able to do that.
No, we haven't. They're not, because they're not running the ball well, and they're not blocking well, whether in the running game or pass blocking. And so teams are being able to take away from Seattle more than just, we're going to take away the deep shot. Okay, well, then we'll do these other two things, the intermediate passing and the running game in order to pull them out of that. But if they can't run block, does it matter?
And, and Collins has been doing great. I mean, he's a fighter. He fights for every yard. He's generating a lot of push after contact. And but there's really no clear holes, for the most part, unless a play completely breaks down for a defense. Let me give you some stats on the season for the Seahawks. 30th in yards per game right now, 30th in passing yards, 22nd in points per game, 22nd in rushing yards per game, dead last in third down conversion rate at 33%. Last year, it was close to 39 or 40%. And Pete Carroll said in the offseason, that's one of the most important things that we are going to focus on to improve in the offseason. So they went out and did the Waldron thing. They and we're even worse than we were before, which again, I think points directly towards the offensive line there.
Some of it also has to do with the fact that Wilson was hurt and you got Geno Smith in there.
Yeah, but that's a small, okay.
It's not a small. I mean,
it's a 3.5 game sample size.
Yeah.
That adds to the total, but quite frankly, We were dismal before and after that.
We were better before. We've been worse after because Wilson hasn't played well.
We ranked 31st in first downs per game, only beating out the 2-8 Texans. 32nd in time of possession, under 25 minutes a game.
That has a lot to do with
plays
defense.
per game. 32nd in plays per game. I mean, literally, it's just. And preseason, you and I, and damn near everyone else, was talking about the Seahawks being a top 5 offense.
Yeah, and they started out the year as a top 5 offense. When Wilson got hurt, they were number 1 in the league in yards per play and points per drive. Yeah. When they had the ball, they moved the ball, they scored points.
So and conversely, the defense has allowed 209 points on the season, which is 5th in the NFL. And overall,
which is hard
when
to
you
believe,
take all the metrics available, they're ranked 15th in the NFL and in defense.
In DVOA.
And they started last in the first 5 games.
It's hard to me to believe that the defense is 5th in points per game, simply because they cannot get off the field.
Which is crazy, right?
They cannot
the whole
get off the field.
Bend but not break thing, but
they're just bending and bending and bending and bending and bending. And giving up 10 play,
and they're not allowing
play,
the offense to be on the field, which is supposed to be our thing.
Which it hasn't been ever since Wilson got hurt. But
yeah, so you would think, and the hard part is that it is the NFL. You do have to take a look at strength of schedule. It just is one of the factors, especially on a team where the margin of error is so small. Seattle is that team. When you have a small margin of error, teams that are very equal to you or better than you have a better than even chance of beating you. And that's what's happened this year. Given the injury and then given the way that the offense plays well, then the defense starts to play well, but the offense reverts a little bit. It just hasn't all lined up for us. But if you take everything out of the equation, our record and everything else, you take a look at the upcoming games, we definitely have a chance to kind of make things right and feel better about, the season and what we have. And it really, I think, if you end up with a 500 record at the end of the year, or maybe one game better, like 9-7 or 9-8, whatever it is, you approach that off season maybe a little differently. More in line with kind of what I was talking about with, okay, let's tweak the offensive line or rebuild the offensive line. Let's focus maybe on, a single player on the offense that could really have an impact, like a running back that could come in and really kind of stabilize that situation. We haven't had a running back for 3 or 4 years, Keith, that's been able to play more than 12 games in a single season. Just to kind of have that rock would be great. And then, on the defensive side, I think that you need to focus some attention to the trenches there, and rebuild that defensive back thing and figure out what you're going to do with Bobby Wagner. I'm just not completely sold. There's a lot of folks out there right now pounding the table for a complete rebuild, jettison the coaching staff and jettison Russell Wilson, or building around Russell Wilson. So there's kind of, there's the deep 6 where you're jettisoning everything. There's everything but Russell Wilson. And then my approach quite possibly was the more likely approach, if you're pragmatic, is to keep the nucleus together and rebuild the margins. Because if you really take a look at the metrics around the offensive line play and stuff, I really do think that that's probably the driving factor in a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line play, the inconsistent pass rush, and the poor coverage by the cornerbacks. I mean, those are the different things. And there's a lot of different ways that you can attack addressing those things. And ultimately, it's going to come down to what we talked about in the offseason, which is that the Seahawks keep retooling and just looking for okay, where's that player that can tilt the field? Where's that, get that one guy in that can make a difference on defense? But then philosophically, where are you? You've got all your resources tied up in safety and linebacker,
Bobby Wagner. Yeah.
And you don't like that's not the philosophical way you should build a defense, because
and it's not Pete Carroll's typical way.
You want to build it, in the trenches and at cornerback. I mean, those are the positions that are highly valued for a reason, because those are the ones that have a bigger influence on the quality of your defense.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I get that Bobby Wagner is a generational player at linebacker, and you do what you need to do to keep him and all of that, because guys like him are so rare. They just don't come around.
You're going to have to moderate that contract though a little bit. I mean, if you can re-sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal extension and kind of take that hit a little bit and spread it out and push it to where the final year is void year or something like that, I would consider obviously having Bobby Wagner back on this team. I just don't know that you can pay him on a 1 year deal $20 million when you have so many other things going on.
Yeah, I think they're either going to have to rework that deal, or they're probably going to move him. $20 million.
And quite frankly, I think that you're seeing a little signs here and there where he's diminishing a little bit. It's it's a long time to play in the NFL when you're racking up that many tackles a year, and he's amazing with really very few injuries and being out at all. He's just a workhorse. Obviously the heart and soul of what the defense is, but that's just going to have to be one of those considerations this year.
At some point, that conversation needs to be had in the Seahawks headquarters. I just don't know if right now is the time to do it. Like, yes, extend him. Give him.
You do need stability in this team.
Give him 2 more years plus a voidable 3rd year, and let him continue to be the anchor in the middle. And we cut his cap room, down from 20 million next year down to 12 or whatever. As far as his cap space usage, and keep him around. The defense is better with him than they'll ever be without him. So do that, but free up, $8 million that you can spend to go
a 3-tech. Go get a 3-tech to help him out, because that's more than anything else, a guy that's not only just a space eater, but a guy that can create penetration and open gaps for Bobby Wagner to operate. So Bobby's not continuing to have to make tackles 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Bobby's really good at diagnosing stuff and getting in and stopping people for a loss. We just haven't seen that for a while. So he's a tackle machine, but everything's,
but he's getting
3 to 5 years deep.
He's getting blocked a lot, and so he's having to come off a block to make the tackle rather than just attacking the running back in the hole. So,
okay, so let's talk about Washington for a little bit now that we're 30 minutes into the show.
Yeah,
which is great. I love the conversation, and quite frankly, it's Thanksgiving week. I don't mind going a little long with this thing. Washington comes in at 4-6. They've lost where they're expected to lose, and they've won some games where they're possibly expected to win, except for the Bucks game. That game in the last couple of games, 2-game win streak, and one of those is the Bucks, and the other one's the Panthers that were surging under Cam Newton coming back. But they've lost against the Chargers, Bills, Saints, Chiefs, Packers, Broncos. 5 out of those 6s are probably expected against tougher opponents. But they've got, their offense is middling and their defense is bad. They're not unlike Seattle, only in reverse. So it is interesting. The matchups in this game, I think, kind of favor Seattle on the road. It depends. It all depends on what team shows up for the Seahawks. Is it a team that's well balanced on offense that can kind of get it done, and the defense plays similar to what they've been playing like for the last 4 or 5 games? I think we get this game, and it kind of starts, a win streak here. Maybe save the Rams game coming up, where you can kind of build some momentum in the season and salvage a little bit.
Well, this is definitely a winnable game, even with the Seahawks in their current state. Like I have been saying, at some point the light's going to come back on for Russell Wilson, and he's going to start playing like he was at the beginning of the year.
This is the game to rehab Russell Wilson.
And I think this very well could be that game, because he's going to have less pressure than he's had over the last 2 games.
And Chase Young is out for the year.
And he was the one guy that you look at and you're like, oh man, this is going to hurt. But then now he's gone. The defense is bad, so he's going to have opportunities to sit back and read, what's going on. He's going to have open receivers. The running game should be able to help him out and get him into get him ahead of the sticks a little bit. And so this should be a game where he can start to really, get the feel of what's going on. And if the offense starts to take off, this is still a good football team. We just need the offense to play how we expected it to play, and how it played really in the first, couple of games when the defense was bad. My concern is more on the defensive side, because even in this last game against Arizona, they gave up 23 points. They also gave up 7 other points.
Right. It could have been even worse. Right.
That didn't happen because of a kicker that was having a really, really bad game. And they gave up, But they were on the field again 40 minutes in that game. Yeah, but I'm not, you can't go, oh, well, they were on the field all the time because of the offense. No, in the very first drive that Arizona got the ball, they had the ball for 10 minutes. And went and scored a touchdown. The very first drive after halftime, they had the ball for I think it was 12 minutes or.
There is a reason that Arizona is 9-2.
Yeah, and that reason has to do with the 2 players that didn't play.
That's true, but come on.
You can't tell me that you replace Kyler Murray and Nuke Hopkins with
Colt McCoy had the best game he's had in 5 years. I'll give him credit.
Yes, why did he have that game?
Because we could not
Saddle's defense.
Well, we couldn't. Yeah, I know. Right.
So we
have issues. We know that.
Yes.
But I'm saying that it does line up fairly well in this game as far as matchups.
Yep.
And so I'm really looking for Seattle to kind of come out and show. And we've talked about Seattle enough in this show where I think that we can probably just talk about predictions. We don't have to really get into the nuts and bolts of this game because it is what it is at this point. This season is what it is. And so what we're looking for is just
get after Tyler Heineke.
Yes.
Blitz him, rush him, move him off his spot, make him uncomfortable. Do not sit back and play coverage against a
dink and dunk guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he will wait you out, take the check down for the easy 6-8 yard completion, and move the sticks and move the sticks and move the sticks. And that's what Colt McCoy did to them all game long.
I was very surprised, I'll be honest, that Seattle didn't do more to get to Colt McCoy. Didn't send Jamal Adams, didn't blitz Jordan Brooks, or Taylor wasn't in there a lot. Robinson had no effect on their offensive line. I just don't understand sometimes where I think that we could have clear-cut advantages, especially with our record. What are we waiting for? It's like we might as well go ahead and just take some chances, find out what we have, maybe show some looks like you talked about earlier with Arizona coming in and doing something completely different to Seattle. Why can't we do that? Why can't we go against the trends that we've established on film and just have fun? Go let our players be athletic and have an impact on the game, and just kind of see what we've got, play around with some things, see what works. We obviously know what doesn't work.
What they're doing. And this is my big problem with Norton, Ken Norton Jr., is that if you're going to this 10-minute drive, 16 play drive, you're
over and over, not just once.
Yes, you are killing your players on your side of the ball and on the other side of the ball when you allow that attack. If you're going to give up a big play here and there because you are you're blitzing and you're attacking, so what? You're not stopping anyone anyway. So at least get off the field, right? But you at least create opportunities for turnovers, for sacks, for big plays. You can't sit back and give up these 10-minute drives and expect anything to work ever. Get after these guys. I'm very frustrated with the way that the Seahawks defense has been game planned for the last 2 years.
Okay. So it's prediction time.
Okay. What do you got?
No. I went first.
You're going to make me go. Okay. I think Seattle does break out of its offensive slump a little bit. I think the defense does enough. And I'm thinking 31-27 Seattle.
Yeah, I like that score, actually. Washington's been in every game. Most of their games are within 1 scores.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Boy, that's hard, though. 30 points for Seattle. Wow. We just haven't seen that for a while. I just don't even know what that would look like. But I need to go there against this defense. This defense is giving up a ton of points. And I think this is one of those games where it just kind of all comes together for Seattle. And it truly can if they just kind of execute, as Russell Wilson says. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go like 34-27. I think, Washington's going to score some points. I think Seattle kind of still bends, especially if they can score on offense. I think the defense kind of relaxes a little bit. And it is one of those games, probably an entertaining game if you're a fan. And Seattle comes out on top, and they need to kind of come out on top, just as far as allowing them to kind of rehab their mental game. Yeah, this is the team to do it against, I think.
A loss this week, it mathematically removes them and it becomes a loss this week, especially to a bad team, puts the Seahawks in a situation where now you go ahead and you sit Dwayne Brown and you play Stone Forsythe and you let that happen because you have no reason not to. And
you could probably do that to 3 or 4 other positions as well.
Yeah, and that's the example. You could sit Posick in the middle and play Shepley. You could.
I would do that.
You could give DJ Dallas a lot more carries. Yeah. At running back and see if he can. And
there's a defensive tackle too, Hewitt, that we picked up. This year. Let a guy come in and play off the practice squad, and probably a few other guys. Josh Johnson is an example at running back. In fact, I would bring him in this week. I would say, you need to give that guy a chance. Penny's not going to be here.
Put Penny on IR if you have to.
I agree. I agree.
If he has been cleared to play, do you cut him? Maybe, but he's gone. And he started.
Farrell did say he had the best practice week that he's ever had in Seattle last week.
Yes, and he lasted 1 play. And then that was it. He was into the medical tent, and then
he did come back for a play. He did come back and get a carry after this in the second half of that game. So who knows where he's at with the tweak, and we'll see if it tightened up this week or if it's good enough to go. I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah, I know. I'm not mad at the player. It just is what it is. And medically speaking, I'd rather see what Josh Johnson has, because it'd be nice to see if he could be in the mix next year. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. You want to send us out of here?
All right. So until next time, find me on Twitter. I'm Myers NFL. You can find Bill on Twitter at NW Seahawk. You can find the show at Hawks Playbook. You can find us at SeahawksPlaybook.com. You can find us on any podcast app. You can find us on Spotify. We're also on YouTube. If you're watching this already on YouTube, please click that subscribe button so you get all of our shows directly into your feed there. And that's about it. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.